Welcome to this deep dive. We're looking at a really unique story today. It's about a champion racehorse, Gandour. Top-level Group 1 wins.
Right, a serious athlete.
Exactly. But then, according to this equine journalist, Ferid, who knew him well, Gandour apparently started this. Well, Ferid calls it a reconversion.
A reconversion. That's a fascinating word choice right there.
Isn't it?
It suggests what? Moving away from just pure speed, pure performance, towards something else.
Towards maybe exploring his own body, how it works.
Yes.
That's the sense Ferid gives. It sounds almost metaphorical.
It really does, a different kind of journey.
And just to be clear, everything we're talking about today comes directly from Ferid's writings, his observations of Gandour.
Yeah.
So our mission here is to take this specific story, this idea of Gandour developing greater body awareness, and use it as a sort of jumping off point.
Right, to look at parallels, maybe contrasts between horse and human, anatomy, physiology.
Memory,
Yeah.
learning.
The whole package.
Yeah.
It's a slightly unusual way in, maybe. But comparing Gandour's supposed experience to ours could teach us something interesting about, body awareness, how memory works physically, maybe even how we learn.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
You brought us this really intriguing material, so let's unpack it together.
Okay.
So Ferid sets the scene. Gandour, the champion athlete, but then, bam, this shift, this reconversion.
Yeah, Ferid seems to describe as Gandour going from just, using his body like this incredible machine to almost discovering it, understanding it differently. And he starts right down at the bones, the skeleton.
And here's the first kind of surprising thing Ferid notes. Gandour, 205 bones.
Right.
Humans. 206, maybe 207. It's incredibly close.
It is, isn't it? The number itself, but then you look at the actual structure.
Oh, totally different.
Radically different. I mean, think about our hands, right?
Yeah.
27 bones each for all that fine movement.
Versus the horse's hoof. One solid unit.
Exactly. Built for power and impact.
And Ferid points out a massive difference. Horses have no clavicle, no collarbone.
That's huge. That's absolutely central to how they move.
Why is that so important?
Well, without that bone connecting the shoulder blade firmly to the rib cage, the horse's whole shoulder assembly is basically floating. It's attached only by muscles and ligaments.
Wow. Okay, so that gives it...
Huge freedom of movement for the foreleg. Massive forward and backward swing.
Which you need for that powerful stride, for running, for jumping.
Absolutely essential. It's all about propulsion and stride length.
So the structure is just perfectly designed for that powerful forward drive. But even with these big differences, hands versus hooves, clavicle versus no clavicle, Ferid, brings it back to that shared foundation.
The basic vertebrate plan, yeah. Spine, pelvis, ribs, limbs.
That fundamental blueprint.
Exactly. And Ferid kind of implies that this deeper structure is what Gandour might be, in a way, reconnecting with or becoming aware of.
Okay, so moving on from bones.
Yeah.
Muscles. Ferid mentions the numbers again. Horses around 700, humans over 600.
Still pretty close, numbers-wise.
But the organization is where it gets interesting, according to Ferid's description of Gandour.
Right. He talks about the power being, packed centrally, close to the main body.
Okay.
And then that force gets transmitted out to the limbs through these really long, strong tendons. Ferid uses this great image like suspension bridge cables.
Oh, I like that. That's very visual.
Isn't it? So you compare that to us, where we have all these smaller, specialized muscles, especially on our hands and fingers, for dexterity.
Right, for fine control.
The horse's setup is different. It's mainly about generating massive global power for locomotion.
So concentrating the heavy muscle near the core makes sense. Less weight swinging at the ends of the limbs.
Exactly. It's super efficient for running fast and for long distances. Makes perfect sense for a prey animal and obviously for a racehorse.
But the trade-off is?
Well, they just don't have that fine manipulation skill we have. Gandour's body, as Ferid sees it, is this amazing tool for overall power, not so much for little precise tasks.
And the joints follow that pattern too. You mentioned we have around 360, horses only about 210.
Yeah, and again, function follows form. Coarse joints are primarily designed for stability, for absorbing shock.
And for transmitting that power you mentioned.
Exactly. Stability is paramount. Whereas many of our joints, think wrists, fingers, shoulders, are built for a much wider range of motion for dexterity.
Okay, so this focus on structure, on power, on stability, it leads to maybe the most unexpected thing Ferid brings up.
Yes.
He says Gandour seemed to be exploring principles inspired by Pilates.
Laugh slightly. Yeah, that definitely makes you pause, doesn't it? A horse doing Pilates.
Oh, right. What does that even mean? He wasn't on a reformer, presumably.
No, no, definitely not. What Ferid seems to be getting at is adapted exercises, things focused on strengthening the core, the trunk muscles,
Okay.
and improving proprioception. That's the body's own sense of where it is in space, and generally achieving finer control over posture.
So the core ideas of Pilates,
Mhm.
but applied to a horse's body and movement.
Precisely. Stabilizing the center to enable better, more controlled, maybe more conscious movement from the limbs.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It's a universal principle, isn't it? Whether you're a dancer, an athlete, or apparently a horse undergoing a reconversion.
It seems so. Strengthening that core connection, that body awareness radiating from the center.
And it really underscores what we're exploring here, this link between the physical structure, how it's meant to function, and maybe even the awareness or consciousness of that body.
And you can't talk about the core without talking about the spine, the central axis.
Right. Another area of difference. Horses have, what, over 50 vertebrae?
Yeah.
And it's horizontal.
Well, we have 33 typically, and ours is vertical.
But the fundamental job is the same, isn't it? Protecting the spinal cord, providing that central support.
Absolutely. It's the main structural pillar, but the orientation changes everything.
How so?
Well, think about gravity. A horse's horizontal spine acts like a bridge or a beam, suspending the weight of the organs between the legs. Our vertical spine has to constantly fight gravity in a very different way, supporting our upright posture. Plus, horses don't sit down like we do, and we don't sleep standing up.
True. So our whole relationship with balance and gravity is fundamentally different.
Completely. The horse's spine is built to transmit that propulsive force from the hind legs forward. Ours is adapted for bearing weight vertically and allowing complex upper body movements.
Yet, in both cases, it's the central organizer. Everything hangs off it, moves around it.
It's the axis for posture and movement, for sure. Different solutions to different problems, but the same core principle.
Ferid also touches on physiology, specifically breathing. This is fascinating.
Yeah, horses are obligate nasal breathers.
Meaning they only breathe through their nose.
That's right. If their nasal passages get blocked, it's a serious problem. They can't just open their mouth to breathe like we can.
Wow. And then there's the breathing pattern when they run.
At the gallop, yeah. It's this incredible mechanical coupling, one breath for every stride. Inhale as the legs extend, exhale as they come together under the body.
So it's completely locked in, like a piston.
Pretty much. Super efficient for getting oxygen during intense exertion. But Ferid suggests this might also be a vulnerability.
How so?
Well, because it's so mechanical, stress or tension could potentially interfere with that rhythm, restrict the breath.
Oh, okay.
And this is where Ferid introduces another surprising idea. He believes Gandour discovered a different way to breathe. He calls it lateral thoracic breathing.
Like breathing using the sides of the rib cage more, similar to a concept in human breathwork.
That seems to be the implication. Ferid suggests that by learning to consciously use his rib cage more fully, more laterally,
Gandour could maybe gain some control, separate his breathing slightly from just the mechanics of the gallop.
that's the idea Ferid puts forward, that it might have allowed Gandour to find a bit more calm, perhaps more control, even during exertion. A new awareness in his chest, his ribs, his sternum.
Like a form of self-regulation through breath.
Possibly. It sounds like Ferid saw it as a kind of self-mastery emerging, showing how even deeply ingrained physiological patterns might have some flexibility. It really highlights how our physical limits shape our whole experience.
Okay, this leads us to maybe the most profound part of Ferid's observations memory.
Ah, yes. This is really striking.
He says Gandour forgets nothing. But, and this is the key, it's nonverbal memory.
Nonverbal, so not memory stored as stories or words in his head.
Exactly. Ferid describes it as sensorimotor, emotional, spatial.
Meaning?
Meaning the memory is in the feeling of things, the sound of a jump, the feel of a specific person's touch, the atmosphere of a place, maybe even the way a trainer looked at him.
So the body itself holds the memory
Right.
directly.
That's the picture Ferid paints. It's deeply embodied, not processed through language, just imprinted.
Which could make those memories incredibly vivid, I imagine, very immediate.
Yes, but maybe also harder to reason with.
How do you mean?
Well, if a memory is a direct physical sensation or emotion like fear associated with a certain place or a rough hand, you can't just talk yourself out of it, can you?
Right. Your body just reacts based on that imprint. It bypasses conscious thought sometimes. A gentle touch leaves one imprint, but a frightening experience leaves another very physical, very persistent one.
That sounds difficult. It makes the body sound like it could get stuck in those patterns.
It can be a challenge. These kinds of memories can be very resistant to just wanting them to change.
And yet, Ferid also talks about the possibility of change. He uses words like reprogramming, even forgiveness.
Which seems contradictory. If the memory is so physical and nonverbal, how could it change?
According to Ferid, it's through new experiences. Consistent, repeated, positive experiences.
Ah, so overrating the old pattern.
Kind of. More like building new pathways. If a horse is fearful of a certain approach because of past roughness, patient, gentle, predictable approaches over time can create new associations.
So the old memory might still be there, but the body learns a new response, a different reaction in the present.
Exactly. It's like unlearning the automatic fear response and learning a calm response instead. It's not about erasing the past, but changing the body's current reaction to triggers related to that past.
That's a really powerful idea. It offers a path forward.
It feels very hopeful, doesn't it? That even these deep embodied traces aren't necessarily permanent fixtures.
It speaks to a real capacity for change, for learning at a fundamental bodily level.
So if we pull all these threads together, the unique anatomy built for power, this idea of discovering core stability later in life, the mechanics of breath, finding maybe a new conscious element, this incredibly vivid nonverbal memory.
Yeah.
Ferid's ultimate takeaway from Gandour seems to be this metaphor of the horse as a mirror.
A mirror. How so?
Reflecting things back to us. A highly sensitive body, a being that learns through physical experience, reflecting our own actions, our own presence, our own states back to us.
Ah, I see, like a biofeedback mechanism almost.
Maybe. And Ferid seems to see in Gandour's journey this shared quest.
A shared quest.
Right.
Between horse and human.
Yeah. This quest of a living body designed to sense and move, trying to find its balance, its center, its most efficient and maybe conscious way of being. A search for integrated, aware movement.
That's a beautiful way to put it, a shared quest for embodiment.
It really is. So this whole deep dive into Gandour's story through Ferid's eyes leaves us with this central thought, doesn't it?
Which is?
That the body horse, or human, is this incredible archive. It records sensations, emotions, experiences so vividly, maybe in ways that operate beneath our everyday conscious thought. Gandour's story really brings that home.
And that definitely invites a question for you listening to this. What silent memories might your own body be holding on to?
Yeah. Memories encoded not in words, but in posture, intention, in instinctive reactions. Memories that could be shaping your life right now without you fully realizing it.
It's quite a thought.
It is. And exploring this, even through the lens of a horse like Gandour, feels like a real invitation. An invitation to listen more closely to your own body, to your own physical experience, and the quiet knowledge it holds.